Millionaire was blind his whole life, until the poor maid did something unexpected, and Richard Morgan had never questioned his blindness. At 60 years old, the businessman from New York City had built a financial empire even without sight, running his business through his firm voice and sharp mind that compensated for his lack of vision. It was then that Mary Wilson decided to do something that would forever change her employer's life. The 40-year-old maid picked up the colorful water gun she had found in the mansion's storage room and pointed it directly at the face of the richest man in the Upper East Side neighborhood. The cold water hit Richard square in the face, running down his Italian suit and dripping onto the marble floor of the garden. But instead of the expected fury, something extraordinary happened. The millionaire began to cry, not from the cold wetness, but from a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. "Mrs. Mary, what was that?" he asked, touching his wet face with trembling hands. "Mr. Richard, you need to feel. You need to wake up," she replied, still holding the water gun firmly. Mary had worked at the mansion for 15 years. She had arrived there when her 3 children were small, and she needed a job that offered stability. All that time she had watched her employer live a controlled and predictable routine, always guided by the voice of his younger brother, Michael, who managed all his assets. That April morning, everything had changed. While organizing the library, Mary had found a medical folder forgotten among the old books. Curious, she opened the envelope yellowed with time and discovered documents that left her breathless. Richard Morgan hadn't been born blind. The medical reports, dated more than 50 years ago, revealed a diagnosis that changed everything. Psychosomatic blindness, developed after severe emotional trauma. The 5-year-old boy had lost his sight, not due to physical problems, but from an emotional wound so deep that his brain decided to protect him from reality. "Mr. Richard," said Mary, putting the water gun in the pocket of her blue uniform, "I need to talk to you about something very important." The businessman dried his face with the handkerchief he always carried in his jacket's inner pocket. There was something different in Mary's voice, an urgency he had never noticed before. "You may speak, Mrs. Mary. You know I trust your opinion. Do you remember anything from when you were a child, from before you went blind?" Richard hesitated. This was a question nobody had asked in decades. Michael always discouraged any conversation about the past, claiming it would only cause unnecessary suffering. "Very little," he admitted. "Michael always said it's better not to stir up those old memories." Mary felt her heart race. All those years working in the house, she had watched how Michael controlled every aspect of his brother's life. From business meetings to the doctors Richard consulted, everything went through the filter of his manager brother. "Mr. Richard, I found some old documents today, your medical documents." The millionaire stiffened. Nobody touched his personal papers without authorization. "What kind of documents?" "Reports from when you were a child. They say things different about your condition." "Different how?" Mary took a deep breath. She knew she was about to shake the foundations of this man's life, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. "The doctors at the time said your blindness wasn't physical, Mr. Richard. It was emotional." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Richard remained motionless, only the sound of the garden fountain breaking the tension of the moment. "That's impossible," he murmured finally. "The reports are all here," said Mary, lightly touching his arm, "and there's more. They mention a trauma related to your mother." "My mother left us when I was little," answered Richard automatically, repeating the version he had heard his whole life. "Michael always told me that." And what if it wasn't quite like that? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Before Richard could answer, the sound of quick footsteps echoed through the garden. Michael Morgan appeared from the mansion with his usual serious expression, wearing an impeccable grey suit. "Mary, what are you doing out here with my brother?" he asked, his voice full of authority. "I was just watering the plants, Mr. Michael," she answered, quickly hiding the documents behind her back. "Richard, you're all wet." "What happened?" "It was a little accident with the hose," lied Richard, instinctively protecting Mary. "Nothing serious." Michael narrowed his eyes, suspicious. At 55, he had dedicated his entire life to caring for his older brother. managing the family fortune and making sure Richard didn't get involved in situations that could harm him. "Mary, would you leave us alone?" asked Michael, though it sounded more like an order. "Of course, sir," she replied, but before leaving she whispered in Richard's ear, "Think about what we talked about. Some mysteries are worth unraveling." When they were alone, Michael guided his brother inside the house. "Richard, I need to talk to you about Mary." "What about her?" "I've noticed she's been asking the other employees strange questions about our family, about the past." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. "What kind of questions?" "About our mother, about your childhood. I think she's overstepping the bounds of an employee. Mary has worked here for 15 years, Michael. She's always been respectful and dedicated. That's exactly why I'm worried. Sometimes people get too familiar and start meddling where they shouldn't." Richard knew his brother was trying to protect him, as he always had. Michael had taken on the role of guardian since they were teenagers, after their father passed away and left them orphans. But something in Mary's words had sparked a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He stayed in the leather armchair in his study, mentally going over the conversation with Mary. Psychosomatic blindness, emotional trauma, his mother. He vaguely remembered her perfume, a sweet floral scent he sometimes smelled in his dreams. He also remembered a soft voice singing lullabies, but Michael had always said those were just fantasies created by his childish mind. Downstairs, Mary was tidying up the kitchen after dinner. She had hidden the medical documents in her room, in the small staff apartment attached to the main mansion. Her hands trembled as she thought about the bombshell she had just discovered. If Richard could really regain his sight, it would change everything. Not just for him, but for the whole family dynamic. Michael would lose the absolute control he held over his brother's life. "Mom, is everything all right?" asked Emily, her 22-year-old daughter who worked as a receptionist at a doctor's office. "I'm just thinking about some work things," answered Mary, drying her hands on her apron. "Did something happen with Mr. Richard?" Mary looked at her daughter. Emily had always shown affection for her mother's employer, especially since Richard had helped pay for her business studies. "Emily, do you know about medicine, because of your job at the doctor's office?" "A little." "Why? If a person went blind because of an emotional trauma as a child, would it be possible for them to see again?" Emily stopped putting the dishes away. "Mom, that's very specific. Are you talking about Mr. Richard?" "Just curious." "Well, I've heard Dr. Thompson talk about psychosomatic blindness. It's rare, but it exists. And yes, in some cases, with the right psychological treatment, a person can recover their sight." Mary felt her heart race. "Are you sure?" "Of course. The brain is very complex. If it decided to block vision to protect itself from some emotional pain, it can also decide to release that function when the person is ready to face the trauma." That early morning, Mary made a decision that would change the course of their lives forever. She would help Richard discover the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, while serving breakfast in the main office, Mary watched Richard handle business documents in Braille. His hands were agile and precise, the result of decades of practice. "Mr. Richard," she said, pouring coffee into the white porcelain cup, "have you ever had dreams with colors?" The question caught Richard off guard. "Colors?" "Yes. Sometimes people blind from birth don't dream in colors because they've never seen them, but those who lost their sight later." Richard hesitated. "Sometimes I have strange dreams, with lights, with different tones, but Michael always said that's normal, that the brain makes these things up. What if they weren't made up?" Before Richard could answer, Michael entered the office carrying a folder of documents. "Good morning, Richard. Mary, could you bring us more coffee, please?" "Of course, sir," she replied, but noticed the tension in the air. When they were alone, Michael closed the office door. "Richard, I need to speak seriously with you. I found out that Mary has been meddling with old documents in the library." Richard's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "The housekeeper told me she saw her with old papers yesterday. Your medical documents. That is a serious violation of privacy." "Perhaps she was just organizing." "Richard, you are too naive. That woman is investigating our family. We don't know what her intentions are." Richard felt torn between loyalty to his brother and the curiosity awakened by Mary's words. Throughout his life, Michael had been his protector, his guide, his connection to the outside world. "What do you suggest?" "I think we should fire her." "Fire Mary?" "Michael. She has 3 children to support. She's worked here for 15 years. That's exactly why she's dangerous. She knows all our secrets, our routine, our business. If she decides to use that information against us—" Richard shook his head. "Mary would never do that. She is a person of integrity." "How can you be sure?" "Richard, sometimes your kindness prevents you from seeing people's true intentions." At that moment, Mary returned with the coffee, but immediately noticed the tension between the brothers. Michael stared at her with cold eyes. "Mary, I need to speak with you in the next room." "Of course, sir." When they stepped away, Michael got straight to the point. "I know you meddled with my brother's medical documents." Mary swallowed hard, but kept her composure. "I was organizing the library, sir, just doing my job." "Don't lie to me. What did you see in those documents?" "I didn't read anything, sir. I just organized them." "Mary, I'll be clear. If you're thinking of using any information about our family to benefit yourself in some way, you are very mistaken. Mr. Michael, I've worked here for 15 years. I have never given you reason to distrust me. And that's exactly why I'm surprised. But I'll make a proposal. Forget everything you saw or thought you saw. Continue doing your job normally, and nothing will change. And if I don't forget," Michael smiled coldly, "then you will be looking for a new job. And I can guarantee it won't be easy to find another one at your age, and without references." Mary felt her blood boil, but knew she had to be smart. "I understand, sir." "Good. Now get back to your work." When Mary left the room, her hands were trembling with anger and determination. Michael had just confirmed her suspicions. He was hiding something important about Richard's condition. That afternoon, while Richard was resting, Mary decided to investigate further. She went up to the attic of the mansion, a place that was rarely visited. Among dusty boxes and old furniture, she found something that took her breath away. A shoebox full of letters yellowed with time. On the top envelope, a delicate feminine handwriting. "To my beloved son, Richard." With trembling hands, Mary opened the first letter. "My dear Richard, today you turned 6, and I couldn't be there to sing happy birthday. Your father hasn't let me see you since I took you to the psychologist. He said I was interfering with your treatment, but I know you need professional help to overcome what happened." Mary read letter after letter, each one revealing a piece of the truth that had been hidden for decades. Richard's mother, Eleanor Morgan, had not abandoned them. She had been thrown out of the house by her husband for trying to get psychological treatment for their son. The letters revealed that Richard had developed psychosomatic blindness after witnessing a violent argument between his parents when his father discovered that his wife intended to leave him. The trauma of seeing his mother being assaulted and then forced to leave had been so intense that the child's brain had chosen blindness as a protective mechanism. In the last letter, dated just 5 years ago, Eleanor wrote, "Richard, if you ever read these letters, know that I never stopped loving you. I'm living in a simple house in Aspen, at 247 Magnolia Avenue. I hope that one day we can be reunited. Your brother Michael knows where I am, but he chose to keep his distance. Maybe it's better that way, but my heart still bleeds for your absence." Mary closed her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of what she had discovered. Eleanor was alive. Richard had lived 55 years believing that his mother had abandoned him, when in fact she had been forced to leave. "What are you doing up here?" Mary turned around, startled. Michael was at the entrance to the attic, his face red with anger. "I was looking for Christmas decorations for the lady who comes to clean." "With letters in your hand." Michael moved toward her. "Give me that right now." "Mr. Michael, these letters, they are private property of the family. You have no right to touch them." Mary clutched the letters to her chest. "These letters are from Mr. Richard's mother. She is alive." "That is none of your business. He has the right to know. Richard is fine as he is. I won't let you destroy the peace I've spent years building. Peace? Mary almost shouted. He lives in a prison that you created yourself. Michael took a threatening step. Watch your words, Mary. You know nothing about our family. I know that you lied to him his whole life. I know that you hid the real diagnosis. I know that you pushed his mother away. And now you're going to forget all of this. I won't. Then you're fired. I want you out of my house today. Mary felt tears in her eyes, but her determination was unshakable. You can fire me, but you can't stop the truth from coming out. I can make sure you never work anywhere again. I have contacts all over New York City. And I have these letters. Michael lunged to grab the letters, but Mary was faster, running down the stairs. She heard Michael shouting her name, but she didn't stop until she reached Richard's room. Mr. Richard, she shouted, knocking on the door. I need to speak with you urgently. The door opened, revealing Richard in his robe, clearly confused by all the commotion. Mary, what's going on? Your mother is alive, she said, breathless. And she never abandoned you. Richard turned pale. What are you saying? I found letters from her. Dozens of letters written over all these years. She was thrown out of the house by your father because she wanted to get psychological treatment for you. That's impossible. Mr. Richard, you went blind because you saw your father assaulting your mother. It was emotional trauma. Your blindness isn't physical. It can be cured. At that moment, Michael burst into the room like a hurricane. Richard, don't believe these lies. What lies, Michael? Asked Richard, his voice trembling. This woman is making up stories to extort money from us. Then why are you so nervous? Retorted Mary, showing the letters. If they're lies, why are you afraid of him knowing the truth? Richard reached out his hand. I want to hear these letters. Richard, don't do this, pleaded Michael. It will only cause unnecessary pain. Let me decide what's necessary or not. Mary began to read the first letter in a clear and emotional voice. With every word, Richard felt something stirring inside him, long suppressed memories beginning to emerge. When Mary finished the third letter, Richard was in tears. My mother, she really wrote this. Yes, sir, and there's much more. Michael was pale, realizing he was losing control of the situation. Richard, even if this is true, what difference does it make now? You've built a good life. You have a thriving company. A life based on lies, exploded Richard. You made me believe our mother abandoned us. I was protecting you. Protecting me from what? From the truth. From my own mother's love. Mary gently intervened. Mr. Richard, your mother lives in Aspen. The address is in the last letter. Richard turned toward Mary's voice. Would you take a trip there with me? Richard, no, shouted Michael. This is madness. The only madness was believing you for all these years, replied Richard, his voice filled with a determination Mary had never heard before. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Michael realized he was losing ground. Richard, think carefully. If you meet this woman, if you stir up these old memories, it could be dangerous for your mental health. More dangerous than living a lie my whole life? You don't understand. Dad made me promise I would never tell the truth. He said it would be better for you. Our father was wrong. Richard slammed his fist on the table. And you perpetuated that mistake for decades. Mary watched the argument between the brothers, seeing 50 years of secrets and resentments coming to the surface. She knew her life was about to change drastically, but she also knew she was doing the right thing. Mr. Richard, she said softly, if you want to find your mother, I'll help you. But you need to know that Mr. Michael will try to stop this in every way. What do you mean? Asked Richard. He already fired me, and he threatened to destroy my career if I told the truth. Richard turned toward his brother. Michael, is this true? I was trying to protect our family. Our family, or your control over my life. Michael fell silent, realizing he had lost the argument. Richard addressed Mary. Mrs. Mary, will you agree to accompany me to Aspen tomorrow? I will, sir. And I will triple your salary. You will no longer work as a maid, but as my personal assistant. Michael exploded. "Richard, you've lost your mind. Is on the contrary, brother. For the first time in decades, I'm regaining my mind." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He remained in his office asking Mary to read all of his mother's letters. With each letter, more memories returned. The scent of her perfume, the softness of her hands, the songs she used to sing before bed. Mary was also awake in her room, talking to her children about the radical change her life had taken. "Mum, are you sure you're doing the right thing?" asked Emily. "That man has a lot of power. If he decides to get revenge later. Honey, some principles are worth more than safety. Richard spent his whole life being manipulated by his own brother. He has the right to know the truth. What if his mother doesn't want to see him? It's been so many years." Mary had thought about that. "Then at least he'll know he tried. But from the letters, I'm sure she'll want to see him." The next morning, a car with a driver was waiting at the door of the mansion. Richard was visibly nervous, wearing a navy blue suit and carrying a small bouquet of flowers. "Mr. Richard, are you sure you want to do this?" asked Mary, getting into the car next to him. "I'm scared," he admitted, "but I'm also hopeful. It's a feeling I haven't felt in a long time." The trip to Aspen took 2 hours. Along the way, Mary described the scenery to Richard, the mist-covered mountains, the pine trees lining the road, the typical wooden houses of the region. "Tell me how you imagine she is now," Richard requested. "From the letters, she seems like a strong and loving person. Someone who never gave up on you, even from a distance. What if she doesn't recognize me? I was a child when we were separated." "Mothers never forget their children, Mr. Richard." When they arrived at Magnolia Avenue, Mary felt her heart race. House number 247 was small and simple, painted light yellow with white trim, surrounded by a flower garden. "We're here," Mary said softly. Richard took a deep breath. "What's the house like?" "It's cozy. It has a beautiful garden, full of colorful flowers. It looks like a place where a very caring person lives." They got out of the car and walked to the gate. Mary rang the doorbell, and a few seconds later a woman's voice answered through the intercom. "Who is it?" "Mrs. Eleanor. My name is Mary. I'm here with your son, Richard." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Then the voice returned, choked with emotion. "Richard. My Richard." "Yes, Mother," said Richard, his voice breaking. "It's me." The door of the house opened immediately, and a lady with grey hair appeared, running through the garden. At 78, Eleanor retained the natural elegance and the blue eyes that Richard had inherited. "My son," she whispered, stopping a few feet from him, "you've grown so much." Richard opened his arms, and Eleanor ran into the embrace they had waited for over 5 decades. Both cried like children while Mary watched, moved. "Mother, I'm sorry," sobbed Richard. "I believed you had abandoned us." "Never, my love, never. I thought of you every day of my life." "Why didn't you try to find me when you got older?" "I tried many times, but Michael always prevented it. He said you didn't want to see me, that you had moved on from my absence." Richard felt anger growing inside him. "Michael lied to both of us." Eleanor invited them inside. The house was small but cozy, decorated with pictures of Richard that she had cut out of business magazines over the years. "Mother, I need to know the truth about what happened when I was a child." Eleanor held her son's hands. "Are you sure you want to know? Some truths can hurt a lot. I've suffered enough with the lies. Your father was a difficult man, Richard, controlling and violent when crossed. When you started having nightmares and problems at school, I took you to a psychologist. He said you had developed psychosomatic blindness. Because of what? You witnessed a very violent argument between us. I was trying to ask for a divorce and he lost control. You saw things a child should never see." Richard closed his eyes, and suddenly a vivid memory emerged. His father holding his mother by the arm, shouting, her crying and begging him to stop. "I remember," he whispered. "I was hiding behind the living room door." The psychologist said your mind blocked the vision to protect you from the memory, but he assured that with proper treatment, you could regain your sight. "And why was that never done?" "Your father forbade it. He said any mention of the psychologist would be a betrayal of the family. Later, when I tried to insist, he threw me out of the house and forbade any contact with you." Mary, who had remained silent, intervened. "Mrs. Eleanor, did the psychologist leave any records, any documents about the treatment?" "Yes, I kept everything all these years, hoping one day I could use it." Eleanor went to an old cabinet and took out a folder. Inside were not only the original medical reports, but also letters from the psychologist explaining the case in detail and recommending specialized treatment. "Richard," said Eleanor, holding her son's face, "you can regain your sight. It's never too late." "Mum, I'm 60 years old. Is it still possible?" "Dr. Bennett, the psychologist who took care of you, was still alive until last year. He sent me a letter saying he developed new techniques for cases like yours." Mary felt her emotions rising. "Mr. Richard, this means that—" "It means I can try," he completed, his voice full of hope. "For the first time in my life, I can really try." Eleanor began to cry again. "I always knew this moment would come one day. I prayed for it every day." Richard hugged his mother again. "Mom, I want you to come live with me. We have 50 years to make up for." "Son, are you sure? Your life is so different from mine." "My life was empty, Mom. Now I have the chance to fill it with true love." Mary smiled, seeing the transformation happening before her eyes. Richard seemed more alive than in all the 15 years she had worked for him. "Mrs. Eleanor," said Mary, "Mr. Richard will need a lot of emotional support during the treatment. Having his mother around will be crucial." "Then I accept," said Eleanor. "I'll go with you." The trip back to New York City was completely different. Richard talked animatedly with his mother, asking questions about the years they had spent apart. Eleanor told him about her simple life in Aspen, where she worked as a seamstress and volunteer at a nursing home. "Mom, did you never remarry? I never found someone who could share my heart with the memory of my children. And Michael, do you have contact with him?" Eleanor hesitated. "Very little. He visits me once a year at Christmas. He always asks me not to look for you. He'll be shocked when he sees us together. Richard, you need to understand that Michael was also a victim of your father's lies. He genuinely believes he's protecting you. But at the same time, he benefited from my isolation. It was always him who managed everything, who made the important decisions." Mary agreed. "It's a complicated situation, Mr. Richard. Michael will resist these changes a lot." When they arrived at the mansion, it was already late afternoon. Michael was waiting at the main door, clearly agitated. "Richard, where have you been all day? I cancelled 3 important meetings because I didn't know where you were." "Michael, I want you to meet someone," said Richard, helping an elderly lady out of the car. When Michael saw Eleanor, his face lost all color. "Mom?" "Hello, Michael," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "What? How?" "Richard, what have you done?" "I found our mother, Michael, and I discovered the whole truth you've hidden from me." Michael looked nervously between his brother and his mother. "Richard, can we speak in private?" "There are no more secrets, Michael. Mary knows the whole truth. Mom does too. It's time to stop the lies." "Michael," said Eleanor, approaching her younger son, "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I just want to make up for lost time with you." "Mother, you don't understand. Richard is stable, happy. Stirring up the past could be dangerous. Richard was losing his patience." "Dangerous for whom, Michael? For me or for your control over my life? Everything I did was with you in mind. By lying to me, pushing our mother away, preventing me from trying to regain my sight." Michael paled even more. "How did you find out about that?" "Mary found the original medical reports. I know my blindness is psychosomatic. I know it can be treated." "Richard, you don't understand the risk. Then explain them to me." Michael realized he was cornered. For years he had used Richard's supposed emotional fragility to justify his controlling decisions. Now, with the truth exposed, his motivations seemed selfish. "All right," he finally said. "Perhaps it's time for you to know everything." Mary felt something important was about to be revealed. "Let's sit down and talk calmly." They moved to the main room of the mansion. Eleanor looked around, recognizing some antique furniture that was still there from the time she lived in the house. "Richard," Michael began, his hands trembling slightly, "you're right about the medical reports. I always knew your blindness could be treated." "And why did you never tell me?" "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing you." Richard was confused. "What do you mean?" "You're my older brother, Richard. You've always been smarter, more charismatic, more capable. When you went blind, I became indispensable. For the first time in my life, I was the strong one, the protector." Mary watched Eleanor press her lips together, clearly disappointed by her younger son's words. "Michael," Eleanor said softly, "you've always been special in your own way. You didn't need your brother's disability to shine. Mother, you don't understand. Richard was always Dad's favorite. Even blind, he managed to build a business empire. If he regained his sight, he would become even more successful. And you thought there would be no more room for you," Mary finished, understanding the psychology behind Michael's actions. "That's it," Michael admitted, tears beginning to fall. "I know it was selfish, but I couldn't bear the thought of going back to being the insignificant younger brother." Richard was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "Michael, you were never insignificant. But by lying to me, by manipulating me, you became something I never thought possible. You became my enemy." "Richard, don't say that." "It's the truth. You stole 50 years of my life. 50 years away from our mother. 50 years living in unnecessary darkness." Eleanor interjected, "Richard, Michael was also a victim of your father's lies. He was just a boy when all this started. But he was an adult when he decided to perpetuate the lies," Richard countered. "He had a choice, Mother, and he chose to keep me a prisoner." Mary saw the situation was becoming very tense. "Mr. Richard, perhaps it's better if we focus on the future. Are you going to start treatment to regain your sight?" "Yes," Richard said determinedly. "I will seek out the best specialists in the country." "Richard, even if you undergo treatment, there are no guarantees," said Michael, in a last attempt to discourage him. "But there is hope, Michael, and that's more than I've had in the last 50 years. Eleanor stood and went to Michael. "Son, I know you acted thinking you were protecting Richard, but the time has come to let him make his own decisions. And if the treatment doesn't work, if he just suffers more, then at least he will have tried," Eleanor replied, "and we will be here to support him, not to control him." Mary observed the family dynamic rearranging before her eyes. It was a painful process, but necessary. "Mr. Richard," she said, "when would you like to begin treatment?" "As soon as possible. Mary, can you research the best specialists in psychosomatic blindness in the country?" "Of course, sir. And I want you to coordinate everything. Michael will not participate in decisions about my treatment." Michael looked as if he'd been punched. "Richard, I'm your brother, and as my brother, you should have supported me, not sabotaged me. But I can help now. I can try to make up for my mistakes." Richard thought for a moment. "You can, Michael, but first you need to prove you've really changed." "How?" "By publicly admitting everything you did, telling all our employees, our partners, our extended family, that you lied about our mother and about my medical condition." Michael swallowed hard. "Richard, this could damage our business reputation." "Our reputation is already damaged, Michael, by years of lies and manipulations." Mary admired the strength Richard was showing. It was as if finding his mother and discovering the truth had awakened a courage he didn't know he possessed. "Mother," said Richard, turning to Eleanor, "you will stay in the master bedroom. Mary, you and your children will move to the west wing of the house. Michael—" "Yes?" "You may continue living here, but only as my brother, not as my controller." That night, Mary helped Eleanor settle into the room that had remained empty for decades. It was a cruel irony. The room had been kept untouched, as if waiting for its owner's return. "Mary," said Eleanor, while unpacking her few clothes, "thank you for everything you've done for my son." "Mrs. Eleanor, I only did what was right. Many people wouldn't have had the courage to stand up to Michael like you did. He can be very intimidating. Mr. Richard deserved to know the truth. and you deserve to have your son back. You risked your job, your stability for us. How can I thank you for that?" Mary smiled. "Seeing you together is reward enough." Eleanor hugged Mary affectionately. "You are a daughter I never had." Meanwhile, in the office, Richard was on the phone with specialized hospitals in New York City. His voice had a determination Mary had never heard before. "Doctor, I need to schedule an urgent appointment. Yes, psychosomatic blindness for 55 years. No, it was never treated. Yes, I have all the original reports." Across the house, Michael was alone in his room, staring at the phone. He knew he needed to make difficult calls to partners, employees, relatives, explaining the situation. But with every number he dialed, he hung up before anyone answered. How to explain decades of lies? How to admit he had manipulated his own brother's life? The next morning, Mary woke up early to prepare breakfast. She found Richard already awake in the kitchen, clumsily fiddling with the coffee maker. "Mr. Richard, let me do that." "Mary, I need to learn to do things for myself. For too many years, I let others control even the smallest aspects of my life." "You were always independent in business, but emotionally dependent. Michael decided when I went out, who I talked to, which doctors I saw. I need to reclaim my autonomy." Mary observed Richard struggling with the coffee maker and felt a mixture of pride and affection. "May I at least teach you how to use the coffee maker?" Richard smiled. "I'll accept that help." Eleanor came down to the kitchen a few minutes later, wearing a simple light blue dress. At 78 years old, she maintained a natural dignity that was impressive. "Good morning, son," she said, kissing Richard's forehead. "Good morning, Mother. Did you sleep well?" "Better than in years. I dreamed you were a child again, and we were planting flowers in the garden." Richard smiled. "Maybe we can actually do that today. Do you remember how we used to plant together?" "Some memories are coming back. They're fragments, but they're clear." Mary served coffee for the three of them. "Mr. Richard, were you able to schedule the appointment with the specialist?" "Yes, Dr. William Parker at University Medical Center. He's considered the best neurologist for psychosomatic cases in the country. The appointment is tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Did he say anything about the chances of recovery?" "He said he needs to examine me before giving any prognosis, but he seemed optimistic when I mentioned that some visual memories are returning." Eleanor held her son's hand. "Regardless of the outcome, Richard, I'm proud of your courage." "Mother, I'm doing this as much for you as for myself. I want to see your face. I want to see the colors of the garden you loved so much." At that moment, Michael entered the kitchen. He looked visibly worn out, with deep, dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning," he murmured. "Good morning, Michael," replied Eleanor. "Would you like to have coffee with us?" "Thank you, Mother." Richard noticed the tension. "Michael, did you make the calls we talked about yesterday?" "Some. It's harder than I imagined. Explaining the truth is always difficult at first. Richard, do you have any idea how people are reacting? Some partners are questioning your ability to lead the company if you're making such radical changes in your personal life." Mary interjected. "With all due respect, Mr. Michael, but people question because they don't know the full truth. When they find out that Mr. Richard was manipulated for years, the reaction will be different, or they'll think he's unstable for having believed the lies for so long." Richard slammed his cup on the table forcefully. "Enough, Michael. You're trying to discourage me again." "No, I'm trying to prepare you for the consequences. The consequences of living an honest life? I'd rather face those consequences than continue living a lie." Eleanor watched her two sons arguing and decided to intervene. "Boys, you're brothers. You need to support each other, not attack each other." "Mother, Michael still hasn't understood that he can't control me anymore. And Richard still hasn't understood that his impulsive decisions could harm a lot of people," Michael retorted. Mary noticed the argument was escalating dangerously. "Gentlemen, how about we focus on what's really important right now? Tomorrow's medical appointment." Richard took a deep breath. "Mary is right. Michael, can you come with me to the doctor?" Michael looked surprised. "You want me to go?" "Despite everything, you're still my brother, and maybe it would be good for you to hear directly from the doctor about my condition." I would like to accompany you." "Then it's decided. The four of us will go together." Mary felt a twinge of nervousness. "Mr. Richard, are you sure you want me to go too?" "Mary, you're the one who discovered the truth. You deserve to be present when we start the journey to correct it." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The rest of the day passed slowly. Richard spent hours in the garden with Eleanor, who described every plant, every color, every detail of the landscape. Mary watched from a distance, seeing how those moments were awakening something deep within Richard. "Mother, are the roses still as red as I remember?" "They are, my son, as red as the love I've always felt for you." "And the sky? Is it blue today?" "As blue as your eyes, my love." Mary saw tears streaming down Richard's face. Some visual memories seemed to be returning with force. That night, Richard barely managed to sleep. He alternated between hope and fear about the next day's appointment. What if the doctor said it was too late? What if 50 years of blindness had caused irreversible damage? The next morning, the four of them left early for the hospital. During the trip, Eleanor held Richard's hand, giving him all the strength she could. Dr. William Parker was a man of about 50, with graying hair and a warm smile. His office was modern but decorated in a cozy way. "Mr. Morgan, it's a pleasure to meet you," said the doctor. "I've read all the documents your assistant sent. It's a fascinating case from a medical standpoint. Doctor, is there a real possibility of recovery? Let's run some tests first, but I can tell you that cases of psychosomatic blindness lasting this long are rare. The fact that you're recovering some visual memories is very promising." The doctor conducted a series of neurological tests. Richard underwent MRIs, EEGs, and detailed eye exams. "The results are surprising," said Dr. Parker after 2 hours of tests. "Physically, your eyes are perfect. The optic nerve system is also intact. The blindness is completely psychosomatic." "Does that mean he can regain his sight?" asked Eleanor eagerly. "It means there are no physical impediments. The issue is psychological. We need to work gradually so Mr. Morgan's brain can start processing visual information again." Mary leaned forward. "What would this treatment involve, doctor?" "We'll combine intensive psychological therapy with visual stimulation exercises. The process may take a few months, perhaps a year, and it's important to understand there are no guarantees." "Doctor," said Michael, "are there any risks?" "The main risk is frustration if the treatment doesn't work, but from a medical standpoint, there are no physical risks." Richard held his mother's hand. "Doctor, when can we start?" "Tomorrow, if you wish, but I must warn you, it will be an emotionally intense process. You'll have to relive and process the original trauma that caused the blindness." "I'm ready." Dr. Parker smiled. "Then let's begin this journey." When they left the hospital, Richard was visibly emotional. "For the first time in decades, I have real hope." "Son, regardless of the outcome, I'm proud of your courage," said Eleanor. "Mother, if I can see again, the first thing I want to look at is your face." Mary felt her eyes well up. "Mr. Morgan, we'll all be here to support you during the treatment." Michael had remained quiet throughout the appointment. Now he spoke. "Richard, I'm sorry for everything." "Michael, apologies are just words. You'll have to prove you've changed through actions." "How can I do that?" "By supporting my treatment, by supporting my relationship with our mother, and by never trying to control my life again. I promise I'll try." "Don't try, Michael. Do." The following weeks were intense. Richard began daily psychological therapy sessions with Dr. Parker. The process of reliving traumatic memories was painful, but he persisted with the determination of a man who had finally found hope. Mary coordinated all the logistics of the treatment, accompanying Richard to sessions and ensuring he followed all medical recommendations. She also took care of Eleanor, who sometimes grew anxious about the emotionally draining process her son was going through. "Mary," said Eleanor one afternoon as they prepared lunch together, "do you think Richard will make it?" "I believe he has the strength for it, Mrs. Eleanor, and he has you by his side now. Sometimes I feel guilty. If I had fought harder against my ex-husband." "Mrs. Eleanor, The past cannot be changed. What matters is that you are together now. You are very wise, Mary. Richard was lucky to have found you. Actually, I was the lucky one. Working for your family completely changed my life. During the third week of treatment, something extraordinary happened. Richard was in a session with Dr. Parker when he began to recount a dream he had had the night before. Doctor, in the dream, I could see my mother, not as a memory, but as she is now, older, with grey hair. That is very significant, Richard. Your brain is starting to process visual information again. But it was just a dream. Perhaps not. Let's run a test. Dr. Parker turned off the office lights and lit a small flashlight. Richard, I'm going to place this light in front of you. Don't force anything, just relax and tell me if you notice anything. Richard closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. For a moment, nothing. Then, something incredible happened. Doctor, I see a brightness. Are you sure? Yes, it's a diffuse light, but it's there. Dr. Parker could hardly contain his excitement. Richard, this is fantastic. Your brain is beginning to allow visual information to be processed. What does that mean? It means the treatment is working. Let's intensify the exercises. When Richard arrived home that afternoon, he was beaming. Mary immediately noticed the change in his expression. Mr. Richard, did something good happen? Mary, I saw light. For the first time in 55 years, I saw light. Eleanor, who was reading in the garden, came running. Richard, that's wonderful. Mother, Dr. Parker said it's just the beginning, but it's a start. Michael came out of his office upon hearing the commotion. When Richard told him about the progress, he seemed genuinely happy. Richard, that's incredible. I'm very happy for you. Thank you, Michael. It means a lot to hear that from you. Mary observed the interaction between the brothers and realized Michael was truly trying to change. In recent weeks, he had been more respectful and less controlling. In the following weeks, Richard's progress accelerated. The diffuse light gave way to vague shapes, then to more defined outlines. Dr. Parker was impressed with the speed of the recovery. Richard, your determination and the emotional support you're receiving from your family are making all the difference, the doctor said during an appointment. Doctor, when do you think I might be able to see faces clearly? It's hard to predict, but at the current pace, perhaps in a few weeks. I can't wait to see my mother. When Richard arrived home that afternoon, he found Mary in the garden watering the plants. For the first time, he could clearly distinguish her silhouette. Mary, he called, his voice trembling with emotion. Yes, Mr. Richard. I can see you. Not clearly, but I can see your shape, your height, your movements. Mary dropped the hose and ran to him. Mr. Richard, that's wonderful. Mary, I will never be able to thank you for all you've done for me. There's no need to thank me. Just keep getting better. That night, during dinner, Richard could distinguish the outlines of everyone around the table. It was a magical moment, as if he were being born again. Mother, he said, I can see you're wearing a light-colored dress. It's blue, son, your favorite color when you were a child. Soon, I'll be able to see colors too. Michael was quiet, observing the scene with a mixture of joy and melancholy. Richard, may I speak with you in private after dinner? Of course. Later, the two brothers sat in the office that for decades had been the center of Michael's power. Richard, I need to tell you some things I never had the courage to admit. I'm listening. All these years, I wasn't just protecting you. I was protecting myself too. How so? I was afraid that if you regained your sight, you wouldn't need me anymore, that you'd discover how I was being unnecessarily controlling. Richard thought for a moment. Michael, you've always been intelligent and capable. You never needed my disability to have value. I know that now, but back then my self-esteem was tied to the protector role I took on. And now, how do you feel knowing I'm regaining my sight? Scared, admitted Michael, but also happy, genuinely happy for you. Michael, when I can see completely, nothing will change between us. You will still be my brother, and there will always be a place for you in my life. Even after everything I did? especially because of everything you did. You made mistakes, but you did it because you love me. Now it's time to love me the right way." Michael held his brother's hand. "Richard, I promise I will be the brother you deserve to have." "That's all I ever wanted, Michael." A week later, the moment everyone had been waiting for happened. Richard was in the garden with Eleanor when his vision finally became clear. He blinked several times, not believing what he was seeing. "Mother," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "What is it, son?" "I can see you, clearly. I can see your beautiful face, your blue eyes, your smile." Eleanor began to cry too. "Richard, you did it. Mother, you're even more beautiful than I remembered." They embraced while Richard absorbed every detail of his mother's face. The blue eyes he had inherited, the wrinkles that told the story of decades of longing, the smile that radiated unconditional love. Mary appeared in the garden and was moved to see the scene. "Mr. Richard, you did it!" Richard turned to her, seeing clearly for the first time the woman who had changed his life. Mary was more beautiful than he had imagined, with brown hair tied in a simple bun and expressive eyes that showed all the kindness of her soul. "Mary, you are beautiful," he said sincerely. "Thank you, Mr. Richard. How do you feel?" "As if I've been born again. The world is so colorful, so vibrant." Michael appeared at the house door and stood still, watching the scene. Richard saw him and waved him over. "Michael, come here." When Michael approached, Richard observed him closely. His younger brother looked older than he had imagined, with graying hair and expression lines that showed the weight of the years. "You look tired, brother." They were difficult years, Richard. Carrying the weight of so many lies wasn't easy. "Then it's time we start a new chapter. No lies, no manipulations, just as brothers." "I would like that very much." Richard hugged Michael, and for the first time in decades it was a true hug, without reservations or resentments. That night, Richard walked through the mansion observing every detail. The colors of the walls, the paintings he had never seen, the flower arrangements Mary always prepared. Everything was new and wonderful. "Mary," he called, finding her in the kitchen. "Yes, Mr. Richard." "I want to talk to you about something important." "Of course." "You saved my life, Mary, not just by discovering the truth, but by having the courage to reveal it, even knowing the risks." "Mr. Richard, let me finish. I want you to be my partner in the company. Not my employee, not my assistant. My partner." Mary was breathless. "Mr. Richard, I don't know if you have the integrity and courage that are essential to lead, and after everything we've been through together, I trust you more than anyone else." "And what about Mr. Michael?" "Michael will remain involved in the business, but in a position that respects his abilities, without giving him absolute control." Mary thought for a moment. "I accept, Mr. Richard, but on one condition." "What?" "That you stop calling me sir. Now we are partners." Richard smiled. "All right, Mary, and thank you for everything." "Richard, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "What do you want to do now that you can see again?" Richard looked through the kitchen window, watching the moonlit garden. "I want to see the world I lost during all these years. I want to travel with my mother, show her places she only knew from other people's descriptions. I want to use our company to help other people who live in situations of family manipulation." "That's beautiful, Richard. And you, Mary? What are your dreams?" "I always dreamed of seeing my children graduated and well-established in life. With this partnership, I will finally be able to give them all the opportunities they deserve." "Your children will always have every opportunity, Mary. Consider them part of our family." Mary felt her eyes well up. "Richard, how can I thank you? Keep being the honest person you've always been. That's all I need." In the following months, life at the Morgan mansion changed completely. Richard dedicated himself to visually exploring every corner of the property, rediscovering spaces he knew only by touch and hearing. Eleanor transformed into a new person. At 78 years old, she was rejuvenated with the joy of having her son back. She began helping Mary with the household management and created a small studio where she sewed items to donate to charity institutions. Michael, in turn, was learning to live without the absolute control he had exercised for decades. Initially, it was difficult, but gradually he discovered he could contribute significantly without being manipulative. Mary thrived in her new role as partner. Her practical experience in household management translated surprisingly well to business management. She brought a human perspective to the business that impressed clients and employees. Richard established an institute dedicated to helping people who are victims of family manipulation and psychological abuse. The work gave new meaning to his life and his wealth. "Richard," said Dr. Parker during a follow-up appointment, "your case will be studied for years. It's one of the most complete recoveries from psychosomatic blindness I've ever documented. Doctor, I believe the decisive factor was finding people who loved me enough to tell me the truth, even if it hurt. Your mother and Mary were essential. And you too, Doctor. Without your expertise, I would never have regained my sight." It was a privilege to accompany you on your journey, Richard. 1 year after the truth was revealed, Richard organized a party at the mansion. It was a celebration not only of his visual recovery, but of the family reunification and the new friendships forged. Mary was in the garden, supervising the preparations, when Richard approached. "Thinking about something?" "About how life can change so quickly," she replied. "A year ago I was just a housekeeper. Today I'm your partner in a thriving company." "You were always much more than a housekeeper, Mary. It just took me a while to realize it." "Richard, may I make a confession?" "Of course. That day I sprayed water on you with the hose. I was terrified. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing." Richard laughed. "It was the best cold water shower of my life. It literally woke me up to reality. Sometimes I still can't believe all this happened." "Mary, do you believe in destiny?" "I believe some people come into our lives exactly when we need them." "Then you believe right, because that's exactly what happened to us." Eleanor approached the two, carrying a homemade cake she had prepared for the party. "My dears, come taste the cake. Mother, you didn't have to go to all this trouble." "Richard, spending my life cooking for my son is one of the greatest pleasures I can have now." Michael also joined the group, carrying decorations for the garden. In recent months, he had become a more humble and cooperative person. "Richard, the guests have started arriving." "Great. Mary, are you ready to present the results of our first year as partners?" "I'm excited. I think the numbers will surprise everyone." The party was a success. Richard officially introduced Mary as his partner to all the guests, including important business people from New York City. The story of his recovery of sight moved everyone, but it was Mary's story, a housekeeper who became a businesswoman, that impressed them the most. "Mrs. Mary," said one of the guests, "your journey is inspiring. How does it feel to be the first person in your family to hold an executive position?" "I feel grateful and responsible," Mary replied. "But I also feel I have much to contribute. My experience caring for people taught me a lot about leadership and management." Dr. Parker was also present at the party. "Richard, how have you been feeling after a year of seeing again?" "Doctor, every day is still a discovery. Yesterday I spent hours watching a sunset. It's amazing how the colors change minute by minute. And emotionally, how are you processing so many changes? I feel more complete than I've ever felt, not just because I can see, but because I have honest relationships for the first time in my life." During the party, Richard gave a speech that moved everyone present. "Friends, a year ago I was a blind man in more ways than one. Not just physically, but emotionally. I lived in a darkness created by lies and manipulations. Today I can see not only with my eyes but with my heart. This was only possible thanks to 3 extraordinary people. My mother Eleanor, who never gave up on her love for her children, even when she was forced to stay away. My brother Michael, who had the courage to admit his mistakes and work to correct them. And Mary, who risked everything to show me the truth. Mary wasn't just the one who uncovered the secrets of the past. She was the one who had the courage to confront the lies of the present. That's why I want to officially announce that she is not only my business partner, but also my chosen family." Mary felt tears streaming down her face. She never imagined she would receive such public recognition. "Richard, thank you for trusting me, for giving me opportunities I never dreamed I'd have." "Mary, I'm the one who should thank you. You gave me back my family and my life." Eleanor approached and hugged both Richard and Mary. "My dears, you've given me the greatest gift a mother can have, to see her children happy and united." Michael also joined the group hug. "Richard, Mary, thank you for giving me a second chance. I promise I will never waste it again." When the party ended and all the guests had left, the family gathered in the garden. Richard looked around, observing the people he loved under the soft light of the garden lanterns. "Do you know what amazes me the most?" "What?" they all asked at the same time. "That true happiness only came when I stopped accepting lies and started living the truth, no matter how painful it was." Mary agreed. "The truth might hurt at the moment, but it's the only solid foundation to build a real life on." "And true love," Eleanor added, "can only flourish when there are no secrets between people." Michael, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. "Richard, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "Do you truly forgive me? Or are you just saying that because we're brothers?" Richard looked directly into his brother's eyes. "Michael, true forgiveness isn't just saying you forgive someone. It's choosing to build something new with that person, and that's what we're doing." "Thank you, Richard. That means everything to me." Mary observed the interaction between the brothers and reflected on how honesty had transformed not only Richard, but the entire family dynamic. "Richard," she said, "what do you plan to do from now on?" "Several things. First, I want to travel with my mother to places she's always wanted to visit. Second, I want to expand our institute to help more people. And third, Richard smiled, I want to learn how to drive. At 60 years old, I'm finally going to get my first driver's license." Everyone laughed, imagining Richard behind the wheel after a lifetime of being driven by others. "Richard, promise you'll be careful," said Eleanor, worried. "Mother, after everything I've been through, driving will be a piece of cake." Mary laughed. "Richard, may I make a suggestion?" "Of course. How about we start with a very slow, automatic car?" "I accept my partner's suggestion." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Richard stayed alone in the garden. He looked at the starry sky, marveling at the beauty he had missed for so many years. Mary appeared on the porch, holding 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might want some company." "Always," replied Richard, accepting the cup. "I was thinking about everything that happened. Regrets? None. Not even the lost years, because they brought me here. To this night, in this garden, with the people I love." "Richard, may I make a confession?" "Always." "That first day, when I found the medical documents, I almost gave up. I thought it would be easier to pretend I had never seen anything." "What made you continue?" "The memory of your eyes. Even without sight, they seemed to be asking for help." Richard held Mary's hand. "I'm glad you heard that request." "Richard, do you think you would have discovered the truth on your own someday?" "Honestly, I don't think so. I was too comfortable in the lie. Sometimes we need angels disguised as housekeepers to save us from ourselves." Mary laughed. "I never thought I'd be called an angel. Mary, you saved not only me, but our entire family. If that's not the work of an angel, I don't know what is." They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the stars and enjoying the peace of the moment. "Richard, what do you see when you look to the future?" "I see endless possibilities. I see travels with my mother. I see our company growing and helping more people. I see Michael finding his own path. And I see you, Mary, fulfilling dreams you didn't even know you had." "What about romantic love? Did you never marry because of the blindness?" Richard thought for a moment. "I think I never married because I never truly knew myself. How could I love someone if I didn't know who I was? And now that you know yourself? Now I'm open to all possibilities. But there's no hurry. I have a wonderful family, and that's already more than I ever dreamed of having." Mary smiled. "You're a wise man, Richard Morgan." "I'm learning to be. With the help of the best teachers anyone could have." When they finally said goodnight and went to sleep, Richard felt a profound gratitude filling his heart. He had lost 55 years of sight, but gained something far more valuable, A true family and relationships based on honesty. In his room, he looked at himself in the mirror for the first time in decades. He saw a 60-year-old man with graying hair and bright blue eyes, but more importantly, he saw a man at peace with himself. "Thank you," he whispered to his reflection, knowing he was thanking not just for regaining his sight, but for finding people brave enough to show him the truth. On the other side of the house, Mary was in her room, looking out the window at the garden where everything had begun with a simple water pistol. Who would have thought that a seemingly foolish impulse would change so many lives for the better? Her children were sleeping in the rooms next door, and for the first time in years, Mary felt their future was secure. Emily had gotten a promotion at the medical office and planned to go to medical school. Her two youngest children were excelling in school, full of dreams and possibilities. "It was worth it," she murmured to herself. "Every moment of fear, every risk I took was worth it." In the next room, Eleanor was kneeling beside the bed, praying as she had every night for decades. But now her prayers were of gratitude, no longer of supplication. "Thank you, God, for allowing me to embrace my son again, for finding Mary, for giving Richard the strength to seek the truth, and for touching Michael's heart so he could find the path of honesty." And in his office, Michael was writing in a journal he had started keeping since the truth came out. It was his way of processing decades of lies and beginning a new chapter in his life. Today was the party. I saw my brother truly happy for the first time in years. I saw my mother radiant. I saw Mary being recognized for what she always was, an extraordinary person. And for the first time in decades, I felt proud to be part of this family. Not as the controller, but as the younger brother who finally learned to love without manipulating. That night, the Morgan mansion slept in peace. 4 people who had gone through a journey of pain, revelation, and healing finally rested, knowing that tomorrow would be built on the solid foundation of truth and genuine love. Richard had gained much more than his sight. He had gained a true family, based not on dependency or control, but on love, respect, and honesty. And all thanks to a courageous woman who dared to throw cold water in the face of the lies that for decades had kept them all prisoners of darkness. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Mary made the right decision by revealing the truth? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories.